Hey, today I'm talking about 3 musicals. The first one is a Ukrainian one that I can't pronounce, but it's really good and you should definitely check it out. I'm also going to talk about Chicago and Encanto. First up is the Ukrainian film. I was really delighted and surprised by this movie. So the basic premise is there is this hotel restaurant in the mountains that's struggling a bit, but then along comes a group of Ukrainians who currently live in the United States but have made a return home to explore the country for specific reasons that I won't go into. This movie was a delight. First off, I want to talk about the music because they nailed the music. It's this interesting mix of like old school Hollywood, like 30s and 20s styles mixed with traditional Ukrainian folk music, and it blends together so perfectly. It's a delight. Like as soon as the movie was done, I'm like, God, I want to listen to the soundtrack again because it slapped. The plot itself kind of gets a bit ridiculous, but in a way that really works. It matches the whimsy of the world that they've created. It starts off so ridiculous, and then it kind of stays true to its own logic, and that logic feels very in line with classic musicals. I also really loved how they did the music stuff, because for the most part, all of the music, they would basically like cut to the characters who are going to have this musical moment over back on the stage and them singing out whatever song it is there. And that was just a lot of fun. There was some music that was actually like everyone could actually see. It was like the restaurant had a house band who I crazy love. It's like 7 or 8 women who all are like dressed identical and have makeup on to make them all look similar-ish. And sometimes they're wearing like very traditional Ukrainian stuff that looked really cool. But like their songs were always just amazing. If I was going to complain about anything, I would honestly say it was too short. There's a lot of characters and I wouldn't recommend to cut any of them. I just wanted more time with them because it's just like I want to know more about you and your wants and needs and just like everything about you because they're all just great and fun and ridiculous. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I definitely without a doubt recommend it, especially because now is a great time to support Ukrainian filmmakers. I obviously more so recommend it if you're a big fan of musicals, but even if you're not a fan of musicals, as long as you have light in your heart, I think you can still appreciate the funness of this movie. It's good, ridiculous, whimsical time. Next up is Chicago. This is a 2002 musical starring Renee Zellweger and Catherine Zeta-Jones. I was definitely aware of this movie and like all the hype about it when it came out, but like 12-year-old Charlie would not have cared for this movie at all. But 31-year-old Charlie crazy loved this movie. I totally get all of the hype about this movie. It definitely deserves it because it was great. Also, I'm really amazed at how little I actually knew about this movie going in. Like, I thought the style of music was going to be way different. Side note, I crazy love the music. It's great. And then I also didn't know what the plot was. I thought it was going to be something way different. I can't even put into words what I thought it was going to be. But the story itself was terrific. It wasn't a mystery, but I was constantly just like, I have no idea where this is going. And I love it. It works so well. And I also love the allegory of it. It's very clear what the story is going for. And I like that messaging a lot. I'm also just really impressed with this movie because they have so many unlikable characters. Like Renee Zellweger is awful. But you still are like along for the ride. Like you want to see where it goes next. That takes a lot of talent to make unlikable characters not likable, but like you're down to see what's gonna happen. I will say though, I think my favorite character was definitely John C. Reilly. He was just adorable and I could totally relate to him. He's basically the only likable character, though he definitely has his faults because he's so madly in love with his wife when he really shouldn't be. He's loyal to a fault and it's definitely detrimental to him, but like he's still, you know, gonna keep on chugging along, and I can relate to that so hard. I also really liked Catherine Zeta-Jones in this. I was kind of hoping for more of her as well. She is in a decent amount of the movie. It's just she's kind of more spread out. Renee Zellweger is definitely the lead. So yeah, if you have never seen Chicago like me, I definitely recommend it. It is awesome. If you have seen Chicago and it's been a while, it's worth it to rewatch. The movie still holds up. It's terrific. You're in for a great time. And lastly is Encanto. This is a brand new Disney movie from last year, and the basic premise is there is this family of powered people, except for the one daughter who doesn't have powers. This movie crazy blew up last year. I missed the boat on it because it didn't quite call to me, and I eventually decided that I would give it a shot one day. I just needed to have the hype train kind of settle down a bit and let me kind of forget about all the ads and stuff. But one of my dear friends was pushing me to see it, and I was like, all right, I like you a lot, I'll watch the movie. And I do think that I didn't wait long enough. The hype train put this movie up too high. There was no way I could hit those expectations. But that being said, I still enjoyed this movie a lot. I ended up putting it in the quite like, so it's basically a 4 out of 5 for me. What I love about this movie is that it's not for me, that it is for a very specific group of people, and I love that that group of people finally gets to have some incredibly awesome representation. That just means so much to those people, and I'm very happy for those people. Representation matters so much, and I just love that there's not a single white person in this. That's terrific. I also totally agree with everyone's love for We Don't Talk About Bruno. That is the best song of the movie. Speaking of Bruno, I love Bruno a lot. He is a great character and just so fun, and just I loved everything about him. I also loved the house, and I also loved the cousin that could shapeshift. Those were my other two favorite characters. Anyway, even though I did thoroughly enjoy this movie, I want to talk about the two things that I didn't really care for about this movie. The first one is that they make a really big deal about how Mirabel, she's the only one in the family who doesn't have any magic powers. And I'm like, okay, why is everyone deciding that she doesn't have powers? Where's like the proof that she doesn't have powers? And then we finally got the proof, and it was just that she didn't have a door. And I'm like, okay, her not having a door doesn't mean she doesn't have powers. Not all powers manifest the same way, as in you can't always see everyone's powers. For instance, look at her mom. Her mom, you can't see her powers. And I fervently believe that that's true for Mirabel as well. You can't see her powers, but she definitely, without a doubt, has powers. And so it's just very frustrating to me that everyone was just like, both in the movie and outside of the movie, are like, oh, she doesn't have powers, it's so cool that she never got powers. It's like, no, she definitely has powers, and the movie set it up that she has powers, but like, everyone just wants to dump on it that she doesn't have powers, and it's just frustrating because she does. Also, people like to praise this movie because it doesn't really have a villain, and I'm like, what movie did you watch? Because Abuela is clearly the villain of this movie. She is like one of the worst, evilest villains I've seen in a Disney film recently. She's terrible, and what like makes her even more worse is just how realistic she is, and it's just to the point of like, it's practically child abuse, the stuff that she does. It's definitely verbal abuse, that's for sure, and I really hated her so much, which you are supposed to, but I feel like my hate for her is more than you're supposed to. And I also just hated like how much the whole family just loved to shit on Mirabel. Like they're just like constantly down on her. And what extra got to me is the fact that like her parents practically never stood up for her. I think there was one instance where the mom did, but it was kind of like behind the back, really subtle. It wasn't like, whoa, what are you doing, mom? Back up. You're kind of being a jerk to my daughter. You're crossing a line here. She was never that overt, and that was really frustrating to me because Abuela was very overt with her nastiness. I don't know, I'm just kind of frustrated. I don't know if I really explained my thoughts as eloquently as I wanted them to, but yeah. I don't know. Point being, I still enjoy this movie a ton. It was great. I definitely understand the hype. I think I'll appreciate this movie more in time. But yeah, if you haven't seen this movie yet, it's definitely worth a watch, but I assume that pretty much everyone who is going to see this movie has seen this movie now because it's everywhere. So, yeah. Alrighty, now for today's rankings. First up, we have Chicago, sitting at number 7 in the really like section. And then not too terribly far behind is the Ukrainian film, sitting at number 10, also in the really like section. And then bringing up the rear, seemingly a long ways down, is Encanto, sitting at number 21 in the quite like section. And this is out of a total of 51 old movies so far this year.